First time we are seeing all these letters written by landlords evicting the activists. Frank Ogisha, who is the person who came after me as Uganda, I think had to spend nights in his car because he was evicted from his house. And now it doesn't matter, as long as people know that you're gay, you are in trouble. People are back in the closet. Of course, there are a few brave ones. They're still out there, still fighting, but they're not assured of safety wherever they are. So it is still very bad. It is real.
Thank you.
I would like to add that during the period that I lived in Kampala, I didn't find that to be so much the case, that LGBT people were not necessarily isolated from families and communities. And you saw the extent to which David was appreciated by his family, was appreciated by his neighbors for the things he did for them. He was quite well liked among many of his neighbors. Unfortunately, the bill has exploded a lot of these relationships. So we have friends in Kampala that were doing fine. We had a friend, she's a trans woman, she lived in a village outside of Kampala, she had a hair salon. All of her neighbors knew that she was a trans woman, and she really, as long as she stayed within her village, she didn't have that many problems. People knew her and understood her. The bill passed. Now her neighbors have come to her door threatening to beat her, threatening to kill her. So the bill has really prompted this another upsurgence in homophobia in Uganda. And other people have, a few people are handling that by being hyper visible. They're internationally known. They're so well known and seen that if anything happened to them, it would be quite a big deal. But as Victor said, that doesn't assure safety.
I should know this, but I don't. Have there been sanctions, or were those just all words from leading world politicians? Is Uganda feeling the heat from other countries for its policies?
I mean, the aid cuts are on, the aid cuts. Some countries have actually cut aid to the Ugandan government, aid that was, helping with so many things, including the World Bank withdrawing a loan that was just about to be dispersed to Uganda. Of course, a lot of people are falling out of employment, and this is not just gay people, because many gay people even can't work, but those, the public is getting affected. And just recently, the Water Read project, which is an American project that has been saving a lot of people, especially most at-risk populations, men who have sex with men, commercial sex workers, taxi drivers, was closed recently, was raided by the police, and the staff were arrested, and the American embassy decided to close it for the safety of those employees. That has affected a lot of Ugandans who have been receiving services from there. A lot of people, it's hard to just go anywhere else to another clinic and say, I need my medication. You have to go through the same process. So people have missed out on their doses, and some gay people, because that was a friendly place for LGBT people to get services, they had nowhere to go. It is a whole process of organizations trying to get them those services from other clinics.
Well, I think also important, the United States, several countries imposed aid cuts, and the United States among them, and sort of made a lot of noise about this. In fact, just last week I was speaking with David Bahati, who was the author of the law, and he noted that the United States has increased military aid at the same time they're cutting aid for programs like this. And so here you have this genocidally minded man who is able to say, you are the ones who are cutting the medicine and sending us more guns. The United States has sent 150 special forces troops and a number of new gunships and so on, apparently because to hunt Joseph Kony, a sort of terrible guy who's not in Uganda, and very transparently to send a signal to Uganda, which has been an important proxy for the United States in the region. We're going to make this public show of cutting aid, but don't worry, the money is still coming, and in fact now it's coming in the form of more guns.
Yeah.
Why Uganda? Why is this happening in Uganda now?
American preachers.
Well, I mean, yes, to a certain extent, although there's definitely an element of that. David Bahati, the author of the law, got his political training in the United States and counts a number. He calls as a mentor a senator named Jim Inhofe from Oklahoma, who was famous in American politics for coining as a campaign slogan the 3 Gs, God, gays, and guns, and that's what gets you elected. He is for 2 of them and not 1. You can sort it out. He's been very involved in Ugandan politics, but I don't think that answers why now. I think the answer has more to do with internal Ugandan politics. There is this sort of foreman like David Bahati who had their own political reasons. There was support from a very powerful country, but I think it was the roots are deeper than that.
It has a lot to do with the upcoming election. So to give you some background, President Museveni came into power almost 30 years ago now, and he was supposed to be part of this generation of new African leaders who were going to repair the roads and tackle corruption and alleviate poverty and reduce HIV, AIDS, and malaria. So now you have 30 years of failed campaign promises later. He has another upcoming election. And so he's started to engage, his government has started to engage in increasing tactics to repress opposition and dissent of any kind, not just LGBT politics, coupled with these pieces of political theater to really just distract attention from both the West, among Western observers, and within Uganda to what's actually going on. So the anti-homosexuality bill is actually just one piece of other really horrendous pieces of legislation that have been proposed or passed in recent years. So you had really around the same time that the anti-homosexuality bill was drafted, the Ugandan parliament, and they mentioned in the film, the parliament proposed this appalling piece of legislation about HIV that would require HIV testing for victims of sexual violence and pregnant women, that would allow health providers to advertise your HIV status without your consent, and that would criminalize the transmission of HIV, so really criminalizing HIV positive people themselves. There was a public order management bill that allows the Ugandan police to break up demonstrations of any size for any reason. There's an anti-pornography bill that many people have understood as banning miniskirts and other provocative clothing. And Ugandan citizens have taken this as meaning they are also entitled to attack women on the streets and strip them and beat them because they feel that whatever that woman is wearing is provocative. So the anti-homosexuality bill has to be understood in the context of all of this other legislation that's being passed in the run-up to the 2016 election as populist, as a distraction, and as an attempt to further repress any kind of dissent. An observer mentioned that in the last elections, the main opposition figure, whose name is Besigye, he was accused of rape in order to try to derail his political campaign. And observers have predicted that, well, they wouldn't be surprised if an opposition leader came forward this time that he'd be accused of homosexuality as well.
I'd just like to interject. Oh. I thought that perhaps Judith could speak to this because there's also the issue that the Lord's Resistance Army left in 2007, and it was like the legislation really picked up rhetoric. By 2009 is when it had reached this fever pitch. And perhaps a connection that Museveni no longer had the Lord's Resistance Army to distract attention from his increasingly autocratic and corrupt regime, and then, here comes the gays as this new scapegoat. And I was wondering, as someone from northern Uganda, if you would like to speak to that?
I don't know if I would exactly look at it from the northern Uganda point of view, but I'm really intrigued with the issues of what I'd like to call the politics of homosexuality, like who is using homosexuality to gain what. And I think Victor mentioned people who are like abusing the homophobia in Uganda, maybe in order to get visas and get like things like that have also made the embassies like tighten the process of getting asylum, visas and asylum. And for me, I feel like this is the same about politicians, religious leaders, and other groups in Uganda. And it's I don't think it's only Uganda, like why Uganda or why, but because Nigeria is going through the same. And I know like a gay rights activist in Nigeria who's been complaining about it. He attended my play reading in London, and he's very active on Facebook, and he's been complaining about this, and he's saying, why is the world concerned about Uganda and not Nigeria? And Nigeria has the same law, you know. So, and for me, I feel like it's the politics of homosexual, like for the Ugandan politician, it's about what's the next big thing that I can do that can get me votes, you know, that can get the local Ugandan. So in that way, I look at, like, for David Bahati coming up with this bill, it's something that could earn him votes to be re-elected to the Ugandan parliament. And in this way also, I strongly attribute the signing of the bill by the president earlier this year to this same politics, like, because, and maybe this relates to what Laura is saying about northern Uganda, because I think in so many years, for as long as the LRA was in northern Uganda, the president's rhetoric was, he had this question that he would ask Ugandans, like, do you want